Hi, I'm Peter. This is meant to show you American guys or international guys that German gun laws are actually not that bad. They're just damn complicated and in some places very ridiculous and don't make much sense. But once you know your way around them, they're actually not that bad. Since this is kind of a dry topic and needs a lot of accuracy, I'm just reading it off a sheet here. So bear with me. It will be very dry, very boring. But in case it interests you, just bear with me. This is actually based on a letter that I wrote to Eric from Eric Veteran a few weeks back after he made the video about the British gun laws. I just modified it a little bit, especially since there was a slight gun law change since. I know it said we have one of the toughest gun laws in the Western world, and also our politicians constantly like to say this before they add another regulation to it. But as I said, it's just complicated, but not that bad. First of all, when it comes to owning a firearm in Germany, you're basically affected by 4 major laws, not to count self-defense. First, we have the Waffengesetz, it's weapons law. We have the Bundesjagdgesetz, federal hunting law. We have the Kriegswaffenkontrollgesetz, weapons of war control law. And last but not least, der Sprengstoffgesetz, explosive laws. Most of course is regulated by the weapons law, but most forbidden firearms are banned by the weapon of war law. To give a reference as to why some firearms are forbidden or regulated as they are, I will go into the weapons of war law first. In general, it is forbidden for any regular citizens of Germany to own, make, import or otherwise bring into the realm of the law a weapon defined by the weapon of war law. This law contains a list what constitutes a weapon of war, so no flamethrowers or tanks for us here. In relation to a regular firearms owner here, there are 2 important parts, ammunition and firearms. First, the law defines that by default all cartridges are weapons of war, unless there is a sporting discipline or hunting purpose for that particular caliber. Also it completely outlaws tracer, armor piercing, incendiary or explosive and subcaliber sabot rounds. Secondly, it defines what firearm is considered a weapon of war and thus outlawed or base for regulation that I will go in later. So, A. Machine guns except water-cooled. Machine guns, technical term, as every gun guy would call a machine gun. Machine pistols except such as of a type that entered military service before September 2nd, 1945. Fully automatic rifles except such as of a type that entered military service before September 2nd, 1945. And last, semi-automatic rifles, except such of a type that entered military service before September 2nd, 1945, and those that are hunting or sporting rifles. In a separate list of the Customs Office that defines a bit closer what still is a weapon of war or not, it's actually defined that any semi-automatic 50 BMG or 308 Lapua is considered in general a weapon of war, so that's one of the few weapons that we cannot own. Semi-automatic 50 BMG or 308 Lapua. Now let's get little portions of the side laws out of the way. The explosive law regulates all kinds of explosives, so also gun and nitro powder. In order to produce your own ammo, you have to attend a curriculum and acquire a permit, otherwise you cannot buy powder. Bullets, primers and cases are not regulated. Anyone can buy them, but under no circumstances may anyone disassemble a round if he has no reloader permit. Also we need a permit for any cartridge of a particular caliber that we want to acquire and possess. Till 2003, possession of ammo was not regulated, only acquiring. This comes down to that I can only acquire or possess ammunition for a firearm that I legally own. The hunting laws in general only affect hunters, but it also is the root for why we cannot have weapon lights, lasers or night scopes. Also I think easy takedown rifles, as those things are considered poacher tools. For hunters, it states that they can have only 3 rounds in the weapon if they are on the hunt for game. However, outside of the hunt for game, they could use a loaded 100 drum round, for example, for practice, or if they would go for, say, for varmint. Now to the main regulation to firearms, the actual weapon law. It covers much more than just firearms, hence weapons and not a gun or firearm law. A firearm is a gun that utilizes hot gases to push a projectile through or out of a barrel, as for the definition by the law. The major and thus regulated parts of a firearm are always the barrel, the chamber, in case of a revolver, the drum, the bolt, so basically just the locking part itself, and in case of a handgun, the grip, since it contains the trigger mechanism. In case of the 6R P320, it actually is as in the US, only the internal frame with the trigger is considered a major part of a firearm, so funny enough, also here in Germany for a P320 you can buy the grip itself without any regulations. In case of a rifle, the regulated part is only the barrel and the bolt itself. The bolt carrier doesn't matter, just the bolt. Also in general in Europe we have a slightly classification of guns than you have in the US. We have long guns and we have short guns, and that's about it. A long gun is a firearm where the bolt and the barrel together is longer than 30 centimeters, so 11.8 inches. And the shortest usable configuration is above 60 centimeters, 23.6 inches. A pistol is anything else, so anything shorter that has the bolt plus barrel shorter or the overall length shorter. Also regulated are sound suppressors and air guns, or spring-powered guns with a muzzle energy above 7.5 joules. So in general, a free air gun, air rifle has to have less than 7.5 joules. If it is less than 0.5 joules, then it is a toy. So many airsoft guns are toys. For a common person, it is not allowed to build a firearm. This includes the assembling of pre-manufactured parts, so we could not build an AR-15 from the ground up. However, for cleaning or for maintenance purpose, we are allowed to take the firearm apart as to the degree that the maintenance requires it. Also, you can swap out parts. The least complete gun that we could legally acquire would be, you would consider it an OEM rifle in case of an AR-15. But no gun maker will sell one as for the customer service issues. Apparently one manufacturer tried it a few years back and had so much issues with messed up rifles that they stopped doing this. The only firearms that are excluded from any of the above and are also free to buy by anyone over 18 years are single-shot muzzle loaders if the design of the gun is from earlier than 1871. However, one would need a gunpowder permit as by the explosive law to actually use them. In order to handle any gun, we have to obey certain age limits. With a certified use trainer attending, kids up to 14 may use air guns under 7.5 joule. Under 18 they may handle up to 22 LFB rimfire. If the kid is under 12, it actually needs a letter of consent from a medical doctor. For air guns 12 to 14 and 22 rimfire 14 to 18, the kid needs a letter of consent from both parents or both have to attend. To purchase a 22 LFB, one has to be 18 years old. For anything above, 21. If he gets a psychological certificate that he has the mental faculties of an above 25-year-old. Without that certificate, one has to be 25 years. This was a last-minute addendum because of the Erfurt school shooting, which actually happened on the day that the first major revision since the last 1970s was supposed to be finalized in our weapon law. It also caused them to outlaw pump guns, definition by law. Pump gun is a pump-action shotgun with only a pistol grip. So, well, we still can have pump guns, we just cannot have them with pistol grip only, because this would be a pump gun, or as they call back inside a bob gun. Hunters can buy firearms for hunting purposes once they're 18, so the other age limits don't apply for a hunter. They can even buy a pistol with 18. We have several kinds of permits for the purchase and possession of firearms. In general, those are the Waffenbesitzkarte, or short WBK, WBK. Weapon ownership card. Waffenschein, carry permit in Waffenschein, it's a carry permit, and the Jagdschein, hunter's permit. The WBK, Waffenbesitzkarte, comes in 3 flavors or better in colors. Green, this is the general permit card. Every kind of firearm or suppressor can be entered in this card. Entry does not give you automatically the right to buy ammunition. This has to be individually approved by a stamp in a certain field. A further explanation will follow later. Then there's the yellow one. The yellow card, this is the special permit for sport shooters. It gives the owner the right to buy any of the following types of firearms at any time he wants. However, only 2 firearms within 6 months. There is no proper definition on how those 6 months count, so if the calendar year or from gun to gun or whatever. It also gives automatically the permit to buy ammunition for any firearm that is listed on this permit. So once you buy a gun, you automatically can buy the ammunition for this gun. Allowed firearms on this permit. Any bolt action rifle. I actually once saw a 40mm anti-tank rifle for sale, which back then for sure it was legal. I'm not sure anymore now. But everything up to 50 BMG bolt action is just fine here. Black powder revolvers. So as I said before, muzzle loader were only single shots that you can buy free, but once it is a multi-shot weapon, so a revolver in this case, it can be bought on the yellow permit. Single shot pistols and single shot shotguns. As far I know, a double barrel shotgun still counts as a single shot because the shot is fired from one barrel. Then finally there's the red one. This one is for collectors and for official experts. Collectors have to narrowly define the goal for a collection and can only buy firearms that are covered by the collection. Usually it is not possible to buy ammunition for those firearms listed on the red permit. So, then there's the hunter permit. The hunter permit is a blanket permit to buy any rifle or shotgun that is legally usable for hunting purpose. Those rifles will be entered into the normal green VBK. However, normally there will be no ammo permit stamp in the VBK, as the hunter's permit is a blanket permit to buy ammunition. This permit has to be renewed every 2 years, 1 year is fine. No, I'm not a hunter, so I'm not 100% into the hunting law regulations here. The carry permit is split into 2 basic kinds. One is for security personnel, so bodyguards, money transport security and such persons. Usually those persons can't buy firearms as they are employed by a company and thus get the weapons supplied. This kind of a carry permit allows the holder to carry a gun only when he's actually working. And the other day I actually saw one. It's not really a permit, it's just a A4 printed paper which then states that this person is legally allowed to carry the gun. Second is the Holy Grail. It's virtually unobtainium here. We like to joke that you have to have been killed at least 3 times before you get one granted. This is the full-blown carry permit, as you would know in the US. In order to get one, you have to prove that you are in severely more danger than the average person. Usually they first try to get you to change your circumstances or get a bodyguard, so it is really hard to get one. Further, you have to reprove the reason every 3 years. As far as I know, a gun bought on the carry permit will be still entered on the green BBK. The holder of said permit also needs to have a third-party insurance with a 1 million euro coverage. Then there's the joke permit, or better known as kleiner Waffenschein, small carry permit. This permits the holder to carry a signal or blank firing gun. Concealed or open is not defined, but there were a few instances where open carry single pistols cause major police attention or action, which can result in huge costs to the carrier. So yep, you should conceal carry if you choose to carry a blank firing pistol. Now for the further explanations about the green permit. This permit is for any kind of firearm which is not covered for the holder by any other permit. For every gun, part or suppressor on this permit, we need a pre-approval, except hunters for hunting rifles. But for pistols and suppressors, they need a pre-approval. Also, hunters can get only 2 pistols, revolvers for this, so shotguns. And hunters are the only firearm owners thus far that can get suppressors, but not in all federal states. In order to get a pre-approval, we have to prove a need for that particular firearm. For hunters, that need is a carry pistol to kill wounded game or for the defense against attacking animals. The need for a suppressor is hearing protection. For sport shooters, this becomes more complicated. In order to qualify for a permit as a sport shooter, one has to be at least 12 months in a gun club, which has to be organized in a governing body. Prove sufficient knowledge of the law, including self-defense and gun technology, Sachkunde. has to have shot at least once per month in those 12 months, or 18 times if he did not shoot in every month, but has to have shot at least in the first and the last month of the given 12 months period. Here are further complications that I will get into later. The requested firearm has to be allowed and needed by an official discipline of the governing body. Needed means you have no other gun yet, which is sufficient for the discipline that you want the gun for. Has to prove storage conditions. Thus far we could store unlimited ammunition in any lockable metal cabinet, up to 10 long guns in a 1-volt metal cabinet, that's a class A, up to 5 pistols and unlimited long guns in a 2-volt metal cabinet, class B, if it weighs less than 200 kilo, 420-ish pounds. Up to 10 pistols and unlimited long guns in a class B cabinet if it is above 200 kilo. Up to 5 pistols, unlimited long guns and ammunition in a safe grade 0 with less than 200 kilo. Up to 10 pistols, unlimited long guns and ammunition in a safe grade 0 with more than 200 kilo. More than 10 pistols, unlimited long guns and ammunition in a safe grade 1. A gun room certified as per above requirements. No second person may have access to the firearm. Not spouse, not anyone ever. Ammo has to be in a separate locked cabinet from the firearm except in the grade 0 and 1. You can also store rifle ammunition with pistols, vice versa. Under no circumstances may you store a loaded firearm, however a loaded magazine is no problem. So, unfortunately, those regulations got changed a few weeks back. Ammo can still be in a lockable metal cabinet, but class A and B options are completely removed now. Existing firearm owners with existing safes in those old classes can still use them, but no future new gun owner can use those, or if my storage, if the storage capacity is reached, I have to buy the grade 0, grade 1 safes as well. Also a last minute addendum to what the new law states, that those cabinets can be inherited once or used by other persons in the same household. Any violations will be in future fined with up to 10,000 euro or 3 years prison. I know above I wrote or I said that no second person may have access, and now I said that another person can use the same cabinet. If you're a hunter and your spouse is also a hunter, he/she may have access to your firearms, as this person is considered as entitled to the same firearms. For sport shooters, however, if the spouse is also a sport shooter, one can get her or him added to a owner permit. Only then may the second person have access. Once we have the prerequisite for a pre-entry to the green permit, we can go to the firearm office and apply. Here we get the pre-entry, which gives me 1 year time to purchase a firearm within the definition of the pre-entry. This pre-entry states the type and the caliber of the firearm. For example, in case of an AR-15, it says category B, which are semi-automatic rifles, and the caliber 223 Remington. Once I have bought a firearm, I and the dealer have 2 weeks time to register the purchase or sale of this particular firearm. As per the yellow permit, I can just buy any firearm covered by the permit and register it within those 2 weeks. Once we sell a firearm, the pre-entry also expires and we would have to prove the need again. So we cannot simply sell a gun and directly buy another one because we found out that we didn't like the gun. That gets complicated. One peculiar thing is stated. One peculiar thing, I stated earlier what the regulated parts are and that we need a permit for those. Once we have a given firearm, the situation changes. One peculiar thing. I stated earlier what the regulated parts are and that we need a permit for those. Once we have a given firearm, the situation changes a bit and actually resembles the US laws just a bit. I can buy spare parts for my firearms, so if I want a second barrel, I just buy it and register it. Second grip in case of a pistol is not so easy, that requires a pre-entry as far I know. Also the bolt of a rifle would require a pre-entry. However, next to the spare parts, there is the legal definition of a caliber conversion kit. I can buy any caliber conversion kit in the same or smaller caliber which I have the gun for. So here I have a 9mm Glock 17, and here I have a Glock 34 caliber conversion kit. It's the same caliber, it's 9mm, and I can use it with different sights or whatever, and I can legally buy it just at any time. Same for the AR-15, you just can buy the upper. It's free, or it's not free, but we can buy it once we have an existing AR-15. This one as well is in the same caliber as my base rifle, 223. It's just shorter, it's a 16.75, that's the shortest that we can have as sport shooters in Germany. However, only on shotguns the grip is a registered part or regulated part. So in case of a long gun, the stock, or in case of an AR-15, the lower receiver is a free part, so I can buy them just as I go along. So those caliber changes can be only in the same caliber or in a smaller caliber, which means the diameter has to be smaller or the pressure has to be smaller. As far my understanding goes, for example, if I have a 9mm gun, I cannot buy a caliber changer in 357 ZIG, although it would be the same diameter, but it has a higher internal pressure, which would violate the proof shooting of the gun that it is intended for. As for the long guns, you would think now, ooh, there's a loophole in the law, so what's the regulation? Well, it's very simple. Although I can have basically as many uppers and lowers as I want, if I have only one registered full gun, then at any given time I can have only one gun. So it means I never can have assembled two rifles at the same time if they go on the same one permit. This would be a violation of the law. So this was it for now for the dry stuff. Let's go to what we can have or what we can't have in Germany, because there are some preconceptions or misconceptions that we cannot have many things. In short, as a sport shooter, I can have everything along the lines of the US non-NFA guns, but more complicated as follows. A hunter can have anything that fulfills the minimum energy at 100 meters for the given game that he wants to use it for. For example, with a 222 Remington, the smallest that they can hunt, or the largest that they can hunt, is a deer. So hunters can have any gun or any long gun, no matter how it looks. No minimum barrel length besides the definition of a long gun. Now for the amusement, or better to firearms that are excluded from sporting use. Technically, as a sport shooter, I also have no minimum barrel length on long guns, just like a hunter. But, and there is a big but, now it comes the weapon of war law into play. So now comes a horrible flashback. We have to jump back to our law from the late 70s up to 2003. We used to have the Anscheinswaffen paragraph 37. Weapons that look like a weapon of war as per definition in the weapon of war law. In practice, that was like your Clinton assault weapon ban, but not yet of California level. Also back then, legal definition of the law was on federal state level and not on federal level, resulting in rifles that could be legal in one state and illegal in another. As far as I'm aware of, in 14 of our 16 states, a gun was considered legal if it had up to 2 features of a weapon of war as per list. In North Rhine-Westphalia, and it's kind of California here, to the best of my knowledge, there was only one feature allowed. Here in Bavaria, a bit like Texas, 3 features were okay. Thus, we actually had a civilian version of the Steyr AUG. We were the only ones where the Steyr AUG was legal. The list of criteria was never published, but to my knowledge it contains the following. Color, black or green. Sights with adjustment for over 300 meters. Bayonet lock, rifle grenade base. Magazines extending lower than the trigger guard. Hence the German SL8, the Heckler & Koch SL8, you're aware of it, had a 2-stacked 10-round magazine to shorten it. In US, it had a 1-stack 10-round magazine to block it to block you guys from using a larger magazine. Folding stock, pistol grip, but some Pole stocks were fine, so it's not like the current California law. A ventilated barrel shroud was forbidden, flash hider, front side post protections, and I think threaded barrels in general, but I'm not sure about that. Bullpup also, but yeah, this is it in Germany, in Bavaria, the Steyr auch, green bullpup and the pistol grip, 3 features, but allowed in Bavaria. Also back then, the weapon of war list included earlier dates than the now 1945. In times before my active shooter days, even bolt action rifles were on the weapon of war list, resulting in horrible castrated K98Ks with a cut-off bayonet lug, cut-off front side protection. Here's actually still the remnants of a welding spot to protect or prevent the slider of the side post to move beyond the 300 meter mark. So now back to 2003. Everything semi-automatic went. We could buy Steyr AUG, AK-47, AR-15, MP5, you name it, we could buy it, as long as it was not an actual weapon of war. The regulated parts of a long gun are the barrel and the bolt, neither of which can be from a weapon of war. This means those parts have to be from a civilian production line. They cannot even have been produced on the same machine, resulting in that our guns usually have a slightly altered barrel profile than the lookalike weapon of war. With the bolt, the manufacturer basically has to guarantee that this is produced in a machine for civilian use only. Here, let's go over to the Austrian friends. For them, all semi-automatics are weapons of war, and only really a handful of semi-automatic guns are especially approved for Austria, but usually they have to be modified. In case of the usual rotation bolt guns like the Steyr AUG or AR-15, there's one bolt lug removed and thus also in the barrel extension blocked. And for example, I cannot travel with my AR-15 from here to Italy and pass or cross Austria because my AR-15 is just plain illegal there. Come a few years later, I can't recall the actual date because I was living in the UK back then, politicians started to pee their pants over our violent, evil, bad assault weapons, just to use the US term here. So they wrote a new regulation into the gun law, excluding those guns from sporting use if they don't fulfill certain criteria. So excluded from sporting use are pistols with less than a 3-inch barrel, no matter the looks. If and only if a long gun looks similar to a weapon of war, as per weapon of war list and as the old paragraph 37, so they reference a law that is not in existence anymore. Well, it may not have any of the following criteria. So again, also this is just what's excluded from sport shooting if it looks like a weapon of war. Barrel length less than 42 centimeters, so that's 16.54 inch, so hence usually our shortest ones are 16.75 inch. So here only the chamber and the actual barrel counts, so no trick with a permanent attached muzzle device like you do it with the 14-inch to 16-inch barrels in the US. Bullpup rifles if they look like a full auto version. Cartridge cases of less than 40 millimeters. We banished the evil sport shooters from owning the evil AK-47. Well, let's get to this later. So any semi-auto long gun once a 10-round magazine is inserted. Any blocking device is legal. So if I use my AR-15 or any other semi-automatic rifle for sporting use, it may not have a magazine inside that can take more than 10 rounds. But just the usual simple plastic maglocks or whatever, they're just fine. So now guess what? Just resync the part with the cartridge length. No, that was not a translation error. They actually forgot to exclude rimfire cartridges. A German court actually decided that including rimfire in the exclusion was not intended. But still, we cannot have an AR-15 in 22 LFB as long as it looks like considered a weapon of war. Even the Brits were so bright and excluded rimfire from the semi-automatic ban. So as long we stay over those limits, anything goes again. But on the other hand, also if we consider a plain looking gun that is not considered, it looks like an assault rifle, we can get everything else again. So as long as we stay over those limits, anything goes again. AK, no problem, just get a Sastava M77 in 223 Remington, or for that matter any AK converted to any caliber with a longer cartridge. No 300 blackout for us, as long the AR looks like M16 or M4. Anyone who owned one of those now excluded weapons could keep them though. And actually they even managed to neuter the Steyr AUG Z Sport enough to be approved for sporting purpose. I mean, yeah, it still is a bullpup, but so much neutered that we actually can have this bullpup rifle as a sport shooter. Also 9mm AR-15s, if they look extremely neutral. So neutral means usually that it has a fixed stock and a non-ventilated round handguard. On the other hand, a semi-automatic version of an MP44 would be fine, since it's an MP44, so before 1945. And for another fun part when it comes to this. Take the SKS Simonov. It predates the 1945 cutoff date, but it also looks reasonably similar to the Chinese Type 68 full auto rifle. If a 10 round magazine really, the body cannot be longer than a 10 round magazine, is inserted, it is not excluded from sport shooting. But if the body of a larger magazine is inserted, it is excluded as it looks like a Type 68. Completely outlawed are pistols with less than 6.3mm. If they are past, I looked it up this morning, if they were made after 1970. So this means 6.3mm or 0.248 inches. This applies only to centerfire. This was added to outlaw the evil Hollywood armor-piercing FN57. So now I have to go back to the dry part. Who can and who may not own a gun, and what can we do with those guns? So, who can, I actually already stated, but let's go to the who can't. Our term for being legally allowed to own a firearm is zuverlässig, reliable. Not reliable is first. A convicted by a court of law for felony, had been imprisoned for more than a year, for purposefully violation of a law, if not at least 10 years have passed since the conviction. If in fact it is to assume that a person will abuse firearms or ammunition, so assume, if in fact it is to assume that a person will abuse firearm or ammunition, can't handle firearms or ammunition in a safe manner, or will not take care of proper storage, will hand over firearms or ammunition to a person not entitled to handle such. The next one is people that are usually not reliable and thus are excluded. For a purposefully violation of law, negligence acted in conjunction with guns or explosive laws, or danger to the public safety. For a violation of law in conjunction with the weapon law, weapon of war law, explosives or hunting law, were they convicted to a fine of at least 60 days. Financial fines are counted in days, amount based on your income here in Germany. Or twice to a lower fine if not at least 5 years have passed since the conviction. Member in a club that has been outlawed. Member in a political party that has been outlawed or is legally against the constitution if 10 years haven't passed since leaving one of the above. Also, as an individual member of a club or a gang tried or supported within the last 5 years, against the constitution, against sorts of international understanding, especially against the peaceful coexistence of nations, through use of force or preparations for that, the foreign interests of Germany in danger. Was in the past 5 years at least once on court order in preventive custody for violence. Repeated violations of number 1. Also excluded are persons that have a legal warden, alcoholics or drug abusers, psychologically sick or a danger to themselves or others. So let's go back to fun. What can we do with the guns once we legally obtain them? Well, fun, yeah. We can only use them along the lines of sporting regulations and disciplines of our governing bodies. In order to create a shooting discipline, a governing body has to have at least 10,000 members in Germany, and the future discipline has to be approved by the state. Absolutely excluded is any form or shape of combat shooting. IPSC is castrated. We may not run with a gun, and we may not shoot from behind a hard cover. We may not train our non-shooting hand. We may not wear military uniforms part as clothing. We may not shoot at anything that even remotely resembles a human being. Also, we can only shoot in approved gun ranges. No public land or such thing here. I mean, we just don't have the space for it. There is no public land. There might be some public forests, but yeah, that's about it. One may only use a sub 7.5 joule gun on his ground as long as the bullet can't leave the premise under any circumstances. So again, you cannot shoot a 7.5 joule air gun in your garden, because your garden, well, unless it is long enough that never ever the bullet can leave your premise. So, but you can shoot in your cellar, or you can shoot in the attic. That's fine with air guns under 7.5 joules at least. Only hunters can shoot within the confines of the hunting area. There they can also sight a rifle in. Only shooters with a carry permit are allowed the above, so the combat shooting. So once you have this holy grail of the carry permit, or if you are a security personnel, then you may train, of course, combat shooting. I will continue with governing bodies later, as those are the real problem in Germany, because they basically define what we can have, and yeah. So, carry and transportation. Actually, the definition is only what is not carry. Anything else is carry and thus would require a carry permit. So not carry. Not carry is carrying a gun on your fenced-in property, house or place of business. However, you may never put your gun down. Once you do so, it has to be stored as per above. Not carry is transportation within the need that you stated for your gun. This means I can transport a firearm and ammunition in a locked case, closed back with a cable tie would be fine, and need at least 3 steps to have the gun ready to use. From my place of storage, so home, to and from a gun range, to and from a gunsmith, to from a dealer, to and from a prospective buyer. That's transportation. Everything else is not transportation, and I'm not allowed to do it as a regular gun owner. A hunter can carry his firearm in the sense of carry on his way to his hunting area and back. So once the hunter drives into his hunting area, he can already strap on his handgun if he wants. But that's the only exception from needing a carry permit. Anyway, hunters are the golden boys. Last year a court decided that a 13-year-old law had been read wrong by anyone before and banished hunters from buying semi-automatic rifles that can accept a magazine with more than 3 rounds. As in the older version of the law, the 3-round limitation was to the magazine capacity, not to the actual content. So, and since on most guns you change the magazine from below and technically you could put in a larger magazine, they decided overnight basically, well, hunters can't have them anymore because they could put in a larger magazine. But however, it took 4 months for the law to get changed, so the stated above magazine size doesn't matter anymore. Now a hunter may only put 3 rounds in the gun when he is on the hunt for game. For everything else, for target practice, for, again, as I said before, varmint hunting, technically you can use any size of magazine and any amount of rounds in it. So now let's get to the real pain in the ass. Our governing bodies. As you know, the legal gun owner has no greater enemy than another legal gun owner with a different opinion. Our main governing bodies on federal levels are the DSB, Deutscher Sportschützenbund, that's the German chapter of the ISSF, so like Olympic shooting disciplines. Then there's the BDS, Bund Deutscher Schützen, there you could shoot IPSC. BDMP, Bund der Militär- und Polizeischützen. It's for former soldiers and police officers, no idea where they fit on a worldwide scale. They have also some form of IPSC and action shooting, but not really aware of what they actually can do. Then there's the DSU, Deutsche Schützenunion. It's a catch-all for other clubs. And then it's the VDRBW, Verband der Reservisten der Bundeswehr. That's for reserve soldiers. So for example, I'm in the DSB, so Deutscher Schützenbund, and I'm in the reserve soldiers. There might be some smaller ones, but those are the main ones. Which firearms we can buy depends entirely in which of those governing bodies we are a member of. Unfortunately, there is almost no comfortable way for a sport shooter not to be in the DSB, which is the worst of all when it comes to us large caliber shooters. They never ever fight for us when the politicians try to fuck us. They are mainly about air guns and rimfire. As long as they can keep the shit, they will say yes, and I'm in to every new restriction. In the governing body, we large caliber shooters can buy only 9mm para pistols, 45 ACP pistols, and I'm not using the term pistol loosely here, 357 Magnum revolvers, 44 Magnum revolvers. A pistol has to use pistol typical ammunition. A revolver has to use revolver typical ammunition, so no Desert Eagle either. Bolt action rifles up to 8mm, and that's it. From all the governing bodies, the DSB is the only one without semi-automatic rifles. Unfortunately, they have the most money and give the most financial supports to its member clubs, and given that a simple 25-meter 5-lane indoor pistol range costs upwards of €50,000, guess what? So if you want to be in a club with its own gun range, where you can shoot whenever you want, you almost have to be in the local chapter of a DSB. Every federal state has its subsidiary chapter, which can define additional disciplines. So in Saxony and Baden-Württemberg, you can get one semi-automatic rifle, but from what I know, the discipline is very narrowly defined, so you don't have too much choice there. Here in Bavaria, they approve a semi-auto 22 LFB, but it has to have a sporting stock, so practically you can have a Ruger 1022 with a wooden stock, and that's about it. Also here in Bavaria, they added last year 2 disciplines for pistols. One for old military sidearms up to 1965, and one somewhat interesting one, because as I listed above, the DSC discipline for pistol lists explicitly 9mm para, 45 ACP, 357 Magnum and 44 Magnum, and we could have only those. The Bavarian discipline says caliber from 9mm up to 45 ACP, without a pistol revolver typical definition. So in theory now we could buy a 40 Smith & Wesson, a 357 SIG or a 10mm auto. But note, I wrote in theory. As the law states that I can have a gun only if I have a need for it. Since one that shot already before the introduction of that new disciplines has already a 9mm or 45, for the DSB discipline, he has already a gun that fulfills the requirements for the new discipline and hence is utterly fucked. So in order for someone like that to get a 40 Smith & Wesson or whatnot, he has to sell his existing gun. Then he can apply for a gun in say 10mm auto for the Bavarian discipline. Once he has got his 10mm auto gun, he can again apply for a 9mm gun for the DSB discipline, as he cannot use the 10mm auto for that one. So it's all about being clever in the order that you apply for your guns. In the reserve soldier clubs we can have up to 5 semi-auto rifles with up to 8mm caliber and handguns in the usual military calibers. You have to alliterate a bit. By law there's a base contingent on what a sport shooter or recreational shooter can have. Just a recreational shooter can have up to 2 shotguns, so pistols, unlimited bolt action, and up to 3 semi-automatic rifles. But once he takes part in competitions, and here is a gun club internal competition already valid, there is technically no legal upper limit on how many guns one can have. But with every future gun, of course, it gets harder and harder to prove the need. And usually, as here with the Reserve Soldier Club, the clubs might restrict us. I'm not sure with the BDS how many long guns or semi-automatic long guns they could have, but as I said, in the Reserve Soldier Club that I'm in, they approve only up to the 5th semi-automatic rifle. So, in the BDS, as far as I know, they can basically almost buy everything that is not outright outlawed, because they have a discipline for almost everything. Same as for the Police and Military Club, as far as I'm aware, they have a discipline that covers about everything that is in existence. So, but usually clubs in this governing body usually don't own a gun range. So one might have to pay extra for use of a range, and might be limited to a few days in a month where you can actually shoot. This might give you trouble with the amount of shooting days that you need, what I implied already a bit earlier, but will I go in later. Well then, so basically if you want to have more guns, or as many you want basically, then you have to join multiple governing bodies, and that's what many of us of course do. I mean, I myself, I'm in 2. In order to get a gun permitted, we must shoot those above stated 12 or 18 times, and the governing bodies that grants the need has to confirm those shooting days. None of those governing bodies accept shooting days that have been shot with another governing body. So if you're in 2, you have to shoot at least 24 times in a year if you go to each one once per month, or 36 times if you missed out a month because you had a vacation or were sick. Now take that for 3 governing bodies. That makes 36 times or 54 times per year. That's fun, no? Having fun is a hobby. On the bright side, back to the yellow permit. It is valid for any bolt action rifle, which for any of the governing bodies has a discipline for. So even if you are in one that only grants up to 8mm, you still can get a 50 BMG, as for example the BDS has a discipline for it. After that, all you need is a range to use it on. Good luck. I believe we have a handful that is rated for up to 20,000 joules. Already finding one that offers more than 100 meters is a pain. Space is just limited here in Germany. For 300 meters I would have to drive at least 100 miles. Above 300 meters basically it coincides with the 20,000 joule range. There are just a few in Germany. In order to buy any amount of ammunition, I just have to show my permit to the dealer. We can perform private sales. The same regulations apply as for a dealer sale. The prospective buyer has to show his pre-entry, then both have 14 days to register the sale. Also we can sell remotely, meaning a dealer or private seller can ship a firearm directly to a buyer if we confirm the validity of all documents. However, only certain shipping agencies with firearm permit can transport, which brings me to a point that I totally forgot. Borrowing out a gun. And that is possible. I can borrow a gun for up to 1 month to any person that is generally permitted to own a gun. We have to sign a formless temporary transfer contract, and the borrower has to have a copy of the VBK, so the gun permit, that contains the gun. So I can only borrow it to someone who has already a permit of some kind, or of the same kind better. As a sport shooter cannot borrow a silencer from a hunter, since a sport shooter cannot legally ever buy one of those. So if you're not, if you're still here and not asleep by now, thank you for watching and listening to me. I know it's very, very dry and boring and complicated, but I just wanted to say the German laws, well, they're complicated, but in general we can have a lot of things. As I said, there is not much outright outlawed, and it's very well livable with those things. And yeah, I hope I gave you some inside view here, and well, that's it for now. Bye bye.